All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Erica Wall, and I'm the director of MCLA's Berkshire Cultural Resource Center, and I am delighted to welcome all of you to our first Gallery 51 featured artist segment. We will be doing this every other Saturday. And first of all, I'd just like to welcome everyone. I'm so glad that people are able to join us in the midst of all that's going on. And we at MCLA just want to make sure that we keep our community together, and we're especially invested and committed to our art community. So we want to make sure that we bring all of our artists and those that patron them and support them together so that we can keep communication going, we can continue to support them, and we know what's going on, especially in their studio. So I'm going to jump right to it. Hopefully from the information that we provided that you arrived here, you know who our wonderful artist is and a little bit about her, Galen Cheney. Welcome, Galen.
Hey.
It's good to have you here. And this is an opportunity for us to go inside Galen's studio to talk with her, to find out what she's doing. Most importantly, this is an opportunity for you to interact with Galen and ask her questions and find out about what she's doing and what she's going to be doing. Just a little bit of, I guess, how we'll work it today. I also want to introduce our manager of Gallery 51, Veronica Presadio. Good. And so Veronica is going to be our facilitator. So did you find you have a question in the midst of our discussion or something comes up, just through chat, if you could let Veronica know what your question is, and she will unmute you if you'd like to ask it yourself, or Veronica can ask it for you and Galen can respond, and then we can continue the interaction that way. So I think we're going to jump right into it. We only have 60 minutes, so let's make the most of it. First of all, Galen, tell us, where are you? Where are you located?
So my studio is in the lower level of my house in North Adams. We moved to North Adams almost 3 years ago, and super excited about the museum, MassMocha, everything going on here. So we're a little heartbroken now, as I think the world generally is, about how things have shut down, and we're hoping for the best for our little town. But anyway, the town is full of artists. I am just one, working away, keeping it going in our little spaces. So I'm in here a lot.
Good, good. Well, I should say that I'm a big fan of Galen's work. And if you don't know that, her work is right behind me. So that's
Yay!
I am. I have the fortune of coming into work and seeing her amazing pieces every day. So let's jump right into it. Galen, how long have you been practicing?
So, I'm one of those artists who I think just never stopped. You know how when we're kids, all kids are encouraged to draw, and they're given crayons and to be creative visually. And I just never stopped, basically. I just kind of kept going. So I did do a double major in college with studio art and Italian. And then a few years after that, I went to grad school for painting in Baltimore. And that just kind of sealed it. And I've been at it ever since. And it's been, 30 years since grad school. So yeah, I'm
Amazing.
in it.
Amazing. Yeah. For those of us who are here, some of us may know a little bit about your practice, but some of us may not know anything about your practice. For those of us who might not, how would you describe your work? How would you describe what you make?
Well, I'm working really on two fairly distinct bodies of work. So over the years, I've developed a fascination with collage, and I did a residency in China 5 years ago now, and I was really taken with all the incredible papers that were available, the Chinese papers. And so I started really in earnest developing a whole language of collage for myself, basically like paper constructions, really. And ever since then, I've continued those, but then I've developed a technique to use that same sort of idea, but with more durable materials. So using canvas, basically. So that body of work, it's very physical. It's really open-ended. Afterwards, I'll show you around a little bit, and you can have an idea of how I put these things together. But when I make work, I do not have any kind of a preconceived notion of what it's going to be. I don't sort of make a plan and then complete it. I'll just start, and from there I'll respond to the thing that I just did. So these collage works, I start them on unstretched raw canvas, and I'll often pull in scraps from old paintings. So if paintings don't work, I'll just rip them up, and they'll make their way back into new collaged pieces. So it's very open-ended. Mm-hmm. Everything's up for grabs. It's a really, really satisfying way to work. And bringing in sort of the old work is kind of an interesting way to imbue a real sense of kind of time and memory into the pieces, at least for me, because I can look at a painting and it's got all these fragments from, different years, different bodies of work. Right. So it's interesting for me. And during this crazy pandemic time, I've gotten back into drawing and just straight on oil on canvas painting. I think the other work is a little bit more methodical. Like I have to sort of decide what's going with what, and then I have to glue things together, and it takes time, and I have to wait. So it's a different kind of thinking and a different kind of process, whereas the drawing and the painting, it's a really direct mark making, and it's just like, I think that right now it's just so satisfying. It gets at something really basically human in our desire just to make marks. And it's such a direct line between kind of my heart and my gut and my hand. And it's very quick and really satisfying. So I'll show you some of those things too. So back to drawing and painting during this time.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's a great description, and I think this is a perfect time for us. Can we take a little, can we have a little view of your space?
Totally, yeah.
If you want to point out, let us know, but
okay.
Let's take a look.
Okay, let me see if I can figure this out so that I can turn it around. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna, you can.
There we go. Okay.
So do it this way?
This way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see?
Good. Yep.
Okay. So I've been doing some mono printing, which I do by painting the oil on canvas, and then I'm just taking again this sort of Chinese paper and pressing it in to the wet paint, and then kind of drawing with my finger. So imagine that this is wet paint, and I'll press it in there, and I'll kind of draw on the back, and then I'll work on the painting some more and press it again. So my work is there's a lot of sort of repurposing in the process. For example, printing off of wet paintings, ripping up the paintings, putting those pieces into other works. It's very kind of interactive. I always have a lot of different pieces going at the same time for that reason. It's a little bit frenetic maybe, but it's super satisfying. And I've really been, these mono prints are kind of like diaries for me. Are you okay? Can you still see?
Mm-hmm.
how many, when you're working on a piece, how many of these will you make toward the final product? Like, have you already thought of it in your mind, or is it kind of a layering process, is kind of organic accumulation?
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it, Erica. I really just kind of go at it, and then I wait and kind of see what I have, you know?
Okay.
And then these are some of the drawings over here. Let me see.
Mm-hmm. I got it. It's right.
Okay.
Is that charcoal?
Yeah, so let me show you. This is the piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the charcoal.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, I've been hiking a lot, and I came upon this. I don't know if it was struck by lightning or what, but big blocks of charcoal. So I brought them home and just kind of, you know, like, just
Cool.
yeah, very, very raw. But they feel vaguely figurative,
Mm-hmm.
vaguely ghost-like. There's some sort of spirit there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the scale of the drawings, do they, because it seems like it kind of varies. So are you thinking about that in terms of what you're going to apply to the canvas or print onto the canvas?
Yeah, well, the drawings are really their own thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've never really, somehow my drawings have always been separate from my paintings.
Mm-hmm.
They've never really been preparatory.
Right.
Because the medium, I think you need to back up a little bit. The medium is so different.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm in love with this drawing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's
How
something,
large? Yeah.
there's
How
something
large
really
is that?
interesting happening.
How large is it?
I'm sorry, what was that question?
What's the size on that?
Yeah, so these are 50 inches by
Okay.
30 inches, but there's some sort of,
Yeah, they have almost like a metallic kind of quality with the shading. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
so one thing that has really carried through in my work, and I get at it in different ways, is some kind of a sense of space
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and light. Great. Okay. I think I can let my partner go. Or do you want to say?
No.
I have my helper here. Here's
Thank
John.
you. Thank you. Wonderful job, by the way.
Thank you. I tried.
So, and these are some of the paintings. So as you can see, this one is it's very open, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot going on, and then bit by bit, it just got completely covered up.
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with this color.
Yeah.
And here's
Are these pretty recent, Galen?
yeah, so this is everything I'm showing you has been done in the last, since this lockdown.
Okay.
And thankfully my studio's in my house, so.
Right.
But
Are you in the studio every day? Do you find that you're able to make and create every day? And has that changed since we went into lockdown for you, or was it always that way?
I mean, painting is pretty much all I want to do. So I've never had a problem getting to work, you know? But, you know, there are other things that I have to do. It's not like I've got a secretary and a housekeeper and, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of other stuff that I have to do, but I make it in here, and sometimes it's just to look at things.
Right. Right.
So these, do you want to see more?
Sure.
So this is part of that other body of work that I'm doing on raw canvas. This is my sort of my pile of paintings.
Mm-hmm.
You can see. And these are the collaged canvases. This is a big piece. So this is sort of a pile of paintings that are partially done that I plan to use in other paintings. But anyway, you can see it's sort of, I don't know if you can tell, it's just kind of glued together. Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's all different pieces.
Okay.
So this will give you an example too. It's like, here's a whole, so I've just got piles and piles of like strips of pieces of paintings that I will make something out of. And they just kind of hang around, and then when the time is right, I'll build something off of that. So I kind of surround myself with my materials and my ideas, and then when the moment hits, I'll go for it.
So you putting those larger canvases that you've glued together, you will use those later, or they'll become their own pieces? Like you'll stretch them onto?
Yeah, they become their own pieces. So I've developed this technique of, I use a modeling paste, and I will adhere the pieces together from behind. So they're really strong, and it's like I don't want to hide the process. You can see the seams. You can basically see how the thing is put together. And the size will change over time because I rip it up, I pull it apart. Here's another one underneath there.
Wow.
I guess I let my helper go too soon.
It's okay. When you're in the midst of your process, do you know, how do you know when to stop? How do you know when you're done?
Well, this is the thing, right? Everybody wants to know that. And I think a lot of, if any painters are listening, they will understand that, you know, when I take pictures of paintings in process, right? And then sometimes I will go back and I'll see, oh God, it was so great. Like 4 stages before I finished it, you know? So sometimes the painting is, I find I'm working something through in the process of the painting, and ultimately the painting itself might not really be worth anything. It might not be successful, but I learned something in the making of the painting. So the product might not be, you know, particularly successful, but I feel like it's all important. It all has to happen. And if it's not great, guess what? I can just rip it up and use it for something else. So knowing that I have that kind of back door, it allows me to stay more open and take more risks, because I know that I can, I can use it for something else if this particular painting doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have a question here, or more like a comment from Diane. And Diane, do you want me to ask, or would you like to chime in?
Hey, Galen.
Hey, Diane.
Hi. So I was very interested in your talking about how the work that you're doing right now is much more immediate and changed a little bit from the way that you usually work. And I've heard several other people say similar things, and I'm sort of
That's
doing
interesting.
that same thing. Yeah, and I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the difference in the way it feels to be working one way or another, and why in this particular time what you're doing differently is working for you.
It's interesting because even just as you ask that question, I'm putting things together in my mind in a way that I hadn't before. I think we're all feeling extra vulnerable now as individuals, and I think as a species, and we don't necessarily feel like we've got all the time in the world. I don't know. That's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So this other work, these oil on canvas paintings, these drawings, they're fast. I mean, they're a couple sessions, one session, one or two sessions. They're happening pretty fast. And the other work, the collage work, it's much more labor intensive, and it takes more time, and the end result is just really not clear until, who knows, weeks or months. So I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm just feeling a little less patient. I need something that's like to move my body, to move my arms rather than kind of sitting and ripping. It's a little bit more like sewing. I'm too nervous. I'm too anxious. I gotta like throw paint around, throw this, big block of charcoal around. It feels, it's therapeutic. Yeah, it's working for me right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. I think that's really important and insightful, because I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing, not just artists, but it's a way to work through that. And I think that's important for all of us. And I wonder, do you feel, and if there are any artists in our group right now that want to speak to this, that sense of, have you found comfort in your process as you work during this pandemic? Is there a sense of, again, it kind of feeds that. Other people who might do other things feed it through that way. But, I think that is particularly interesting right now, how people are working through their practice in the midst of these feelings that they're trying to process.
Yeah, I mean, my painting has always been how I've coped and how I've, just sort of dealt with everything in my life.
Right.
There's just a little bit, it's just a little bit heavier now, and it's more universal. So that's really interesting. We're all kind of in this thing. We're at different places. We have, different levels of privilege and comfort. But I'm trying not to put too much weight on the work that I'm doing right now. It's like, it is what it is. And I don't want to feel like, oh, this has got to be so full of meaning because this is such a fraught time. I just have to be honest and paint what comes. And then later afterwards, I can look at everything and maybe make some sort of sense of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I hesitate to kind of weigh it down with some kind of, importance that doesn't necessarily have to have.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of getting back more generally to you and your practice, and so that we can kind of understand maybe a little bit more about you, what is something we should know about you or your practice that maybe people wouldn't get from just looking at your work?
I never really know how other people see what I do. I mean, obviously some people will say things. Of course, I have my own relationship with it. Ask me that question one more time. Oh, what people should know. Yes, sorry, I was having a moment. I think it's funny because, there's the whole sort of online, like social media persona or something like that. And I think people think that I'm at a certain place in my career or my life or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is probably true of most artists who will admit it, that we're all insecure. Do you know? I mean, I'm in a much different place in my career than I was, and I think I'm doing okay. But, every time I start a painting, in some ways it feels like I'm starting over, because there is no formula. I mean, I've been doing it for so long that I have a certain confidence in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I can, I'll paint myself into a corner, but I can eventually paint myself out of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it really never gets easier. It never gets boring either. There's no, I guess there's no there. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just moving, maybe not in a linear direction, but I'm really interested in my own creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's often really the subject matter, my own vulnerability and psyche.
Right.
Trying to get at something. I mean, that's really the subject matter of the work.
Mm-hmm. A couple of different things came to mind when you were talking. The first one is, when you say that whatever the channel is via social media or perception of you as an artist or where you are in your career, how has the role of, how do you feel the role of social media has played in your practice or for you, how that has, whether it's been great or not great, successful, but what role has social media played for you? And when did you decide that this was something that,
Yeah.
did
So it's,
participate in?
it's mixed. I mean, the best part of it, well, a couple of really positive aspects. One is that I feel connected to artists all over the world. And in some cases, it really does feel like a real connection. Sometimes I actually get to meet these people that I've only known online. And
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, we've had shows together. I mean, real positive connections have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to see
Right.
the work of so many incredible artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to share my work. I mean, you can live anywhere and thousands and thousands of people can see what you're doing.
Right.
They see the digital version of what you're
Right.
doing.
Right.
I mean, it's, especially the kind of work that I do, it's very textural. So it's reduced, on the screen. You don't get the full impact, but so I've had a lot of opportunities that way. The downside is that, kind of getting back to that insecurity or whatever, it's like, there's so much incredible work going on there, and maybe, is this any good? There are plenty of opportunities to doubt oneself. So I have to check myself sometimes and just say, how is this platform working for me? If
Right.
can't just be sort of an opportunity for you to put yourself down, it has to be positive. So
Right.
it's really a reflection of where I am in my own
Mhm.
in my own head, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think Instagram is working really well for you. If you look at it, you know,
Yeah.
people look at it a lot of the time. So it's always interesting how artists navigate through that. But I think what you've said probably resonates with a lot of people, no matter where they are in their career. So when you set out to become an artist and you decided that this is your path and you knew that it was going to be a marathon at this point in the journey, has your concept of success changed from when you started the journey to where you are now? You want different things, it looks different for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course it looks different because, you know, I graduated from grad school 30 years ago, and I had a particular idea of the way my career was going to go, and it's just been a much longer road to get where I wanted to be, but I have to just trust that there are good reasons for that, and I just have to. There's only so much I can control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I can control is the work that I do, and I stand behind what I do, and I have to always remember I do have my supporters like you, Erica. I have a lot of really great supporters, honestly.
Yeah.
And I feel grateful that I'm actually still painting. I mean, so many people, probably like 90% of the people that I went to grad school aren't making art anymore, and they haven't been for decades. So I'm grateful for that. It's a gift, honestly. Yeah.
No, I agree. You know, I think one of the reasons we love to have these conversations with artists at different places in their careers is because I think what you've said is very common, and that there are different paths for everyone, and this is not for the faint of heart to pursue.
That's right. You got to really believe.
Yes. And those that, you know, seem as though they've sprinted out of their MFA programs, you know, there's always another side of the story. And I think that,
well, and you know, success looks different these days. And I feel like artists have more control over it because of the online world and social media. There are just so many more opportunities, you know, to do a pop-up show, or to, you know, to get your audience excited, to sell online, to, when I graduated, there were a handful of galleries, and you had to go and, you know, present yourself or whatever and pray and hope. And there are just a lot more avenues now. You just have to sort of be creative, you know, and a lot of galleries are shutting down. Which is sad, but it's the art world is it's a different place than it was 30 years ago.
It is a very different place. It's a very different landscape, and a lot of different, I think what you're describing, there's a lot of different tools to navigate, but it is about perseverance. It's about us that can withstand all of it. And again, I think the hard part of this within art, it is so subjective, and so people also see their careers in different ways, and you have to decide what it is, you know, you're in it for. The other question I had for you is, you know, these are opportunities for us to see your work, and I think most of us just want to see because we admire your work. Lots of artists that we've talked to, you know, they always talk about, and you've alluded to it, the support system that you have. I think artists are other artists' best patrons, supporters, lectors, all that good stuff. But one of the things that I think is critical, I talk with a lot of young artists, those that are thinking about pursuing careers out of school, and the big I think one of the main things that most of them feel is important but also fear is criticism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the critique of their work, whether that's good or bad, and how you actually use criticism to work for you, that it's not
Right.
that it is constructive. So what do you, I mean, at this point, do you seek out, or are you the type that goes and kind of has conversations and studio visits with other artists and you each critique your work? Do you look for those within the art world to have those discussions with you? And then the whole idea of criticism itself, how has that worked for you? You know,
It's
because
hard.
I was in a studio program. It didn't work well for me. That's
Yeah. It's hard. I haven't, you know, so there were a few people in town here who were sort of talking about maybe pulling together a group like that, and I hadn't quite gotten off the fence about that. I'm not sure, honestly, how open I am to that. I would be very careful about who I was in the group with, you know. On the one hand, I'm not looking to just get together and we all praise each other. That's not really useful. For me, I think it would be more of a one-on-one with another painter that I really respect, with specific questions about, you know, if I'm feeling stuck or something like that, just to get some feedback. Criticism is hard. My husband will tell you I don't take it very well.
Yeah, my husband probably would tell they should get together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's useful if it's coming from somebody who really knows what they're talking about and doesn't have some kind of other agenda. You just have to, there's trust there.
Right. Yeah. I think, you know, there's so many different components of it, whether it's while you're acquiring your skills and getting those credentials, or whether, you know, it's a critic for the paper, or if it's just other artists and people. It just seems as though it plays such, you know, I think we talked, you also talked about the insecurities. Those don't just come out of, you know, nowhere. It's a very vulnerable space that artists live in. So, I think it's an interesting thing to discuss, how artists process that. Many of them feel the value in that. The other question I have for you is, at this point, what do you think has been the most important? It could be the most important thing that you've learned or skill that you've acquired. What has really, what's been the most important thing you've learned or acquired in your career to this point, for you or your practice?
I think the most important thing, honestly, and it's the thing that I do tell students when I have them, is, it sounds so simple, is to really just be yourself. I mean, that is the most important, in my opinion, that's the most important thing, aside from just doing the work. Because that's really all you've got. No one else can make your paintings, and you really can't make anybody else's paintings as well as they can. It's otherwise, you know, what is the point? You got to just, even if you're just making awful stuff or it's ugly, it doesn't work. It's just, you got to work through that. You have to just be true to your voice as an artist. And it's hard to find that voice, granted, you know, and I think when you're starting out, it makes perfect sense to copy, to really be strongly influenced by artists whose work you're attracted to. That makes complete sense. But then at a certain point, you got to just, you know, I often want to make paintings that are not at all like the paintings that I'm making. You know, I love what everybody's doing. I'll see something that's really spare and delicate and beautiful. It's like, I want to do that. Or then I'll see these things that are just like thick black tar, you know, it's like, I want to do that. You know, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. I just have to do whatever it is that's happening in this studio, and just be
Right.
really, open to that.
Right. Yeah.
So that's,
I mean,
my advice.
yeah. And I think that, again, all of it is part of the process, whether it's inspiration, not necessarily something that you're going to pursue. I wonder, were there, when you talk about that, were there ever times in your career where you felt you had to produce something because it was about, that's what was
Oh, yes.
trending, or that's what will sell, or
Oh, terrible. It never ends well. It's just, I don't know, as soon as I have somebody else's voice in my head,
Mhm.
like, this is what they're looking for, this is what they want. And I have done some commissions, but they have to be fairly open-ended,
Right.
As soon as I have it in my head that I'm doing something for a specific something, somebody, some project, something, or I know that they want this kind of work, they think they can sell it. It's just like the spell is broken. It just doesn't work very well.
It's funny because I talk to a lot of artists who we would assume have reached a certain degree of success because of the sales, but they're exceptionally unhappy because their gallery has said, you have to keep making this because this,
Yeah.
so they've pegged themselves into this place, and that's the work that people identify them with.
Right.
And they want to deviate from that, it creates
Yeah.
conflict.
I have had situations like that before, where I was making a particular kind of work and it sold very well, but then I was done with it and they wanted me to continue to make the work, but it was just like, it was over. So whatever.
Yeah. And I think that also comes with time, and that kind of acquiring that confidence in your work. And what is it that you still want to learn, or are there any skills that you want to acquire? Like you want to really get into metalworking. I don't know. Is there something that?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I've just been doing these really primitive monoprints, but I would like to do woodcuts and, something a little more advanced in terms of printmaking. And I really love carving. I worked at a bronze foundry for a few years out in Oregon in the studio department, carving whales and sharks and all this crazy stuff. But I've got a certain aptitude for carving, and I'm kind of waiting for that to come into my life. I think I just have to sort of get the materials and do that. But I feel like especially now, that's the same kind of, very physical, meditative kind of work that I think would be really, really good for me to do right now. So
Yeah.
we'll see. And there's so much. I'd love to blow glass. Is that going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot.
Well, it seems like there are a lot of, given where you are, there are a lot of opportunities to explore all those different mediums.
Definitely.
Artists,
for sure.
right? In the Berkshires, North Adams particularly. And when you decided to move to the area, was did you just did you know anyone in the art community here? Did you just decide, what, this place, I'm going to check it out? You checked it out, you're like, we need to move here. What was that process like?
Yeah. So we were coming down to the museum for shows, for concerts and different events. And it was just incredible. And then we came down for the Nick Cave opening and the opening of Building 6. Mm-hmm. And my head blew off. My head blew off my body. And when I got all the pieces back together, I said, I think we have to, let's look at the real estate. So we did that, and we thought, wow, this is really interesting. I think that maybe we could make this work. And so we were living up in rural Vermont, about 3 hours from here,
Okay.
on a dirt road, and it was just time. So we've been looking at, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and we have a question for you. I am going to either, let's see, I don't have a name. Is it Noah? Noah, we have a question from Noah. So Veronica's going to unmute. Noah, would you ask your question, please?
Just if you had any of your carvings
Yay!
available.
That's my painting above their heads.
It
Oh,
is.
yay!
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, these are my my mother's-in-law.
Oh, hi. Thanks for joining us.
Yes. I was just wondering if you have any of your carvings lying around that you could share.
I do not. I do not. And so many of those, Noah, those last ones I did were made out of soap. Very very vulnerable. They're all, gonzo.
Yeah. That'll be the next visit.
Yeah.
We'll prep.
Yeah.
We'll prep better.
Things for sure.
Oh, great. Thank you, Noah, for the question. We are getting towards the end of our time. I wanted to find out, make sure if there are any other questions that we wanted to pose to Galen before I ask her a couple more. I'm thinking, one of the reasons why also we are doing this series is one of the theories I have as we look at the art world and its landscape is that we have a challenge that we need to address for our artists and finding spaces where they can actually live and sustain a practice. And those sorts of places are becoming pretty difficult to find.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that there are these major art centers, but a lot of our artists are being priced out of those places, being displaced. And Adams is an anomaly, we all know that, but it is one of those communities in which we have a burgeoning community of artists who are finding a space and a place to do that. I'm curious, Galen, your experience with that. I mean, it sounds like you were in a rural setting, but I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about how that has helped you, and if there are any other artists who are on our talk that maybe can speak to that, because we're going to be talking with artists locally as well as internationally, and I'm going to ask the same thing. So I'm curious, Galen, for you and anyone else who wants to chime in.
Well, we have found North Adams to be remarkable, honestly, in the support network that sort of is built into the city here. There's, in particular, I'm thinking about Mass MoCA and Assets for Artists, which is a program designed to help artists. And they provide, in some cases, funding, but all kinds of workshops to help artists with, marketing and turning their art practice into a business that can sustain them. And it's incredible. And so beyond that, there are just so many artists here. There are artists that moved here many, many years ago, and they're sort of the old guard, and they've seen the city kind of come up and down and up. And then because it's affordable, there are a lot of young artists that have moved here. And I just have found that incredibly exciting and energizing. And we love it here. Yeah. It's really, it's a great place for artists.
So with all of that, what are some of the challenges, if there are any,
about
living here? So being in North Adams, we are not in an art center. I think there are a lot of resources, but is there anything that you think that can be challenging being here as well as beneficial?
I mean, I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. I think we're going to have to see what happens now, because things are really at a standstill. And, you know, this was one reason we really loved the idea of being here, is because it is a small city and it is surrounded by nature, which is important to me. I get out in the woods just about every day and I don't have to go far to get there.
Right.
But because of the museum and the Clark, which is in Williamstown, and some of these institutions, it was drawing people here. So we didn't have to be, you know, in New York City or Boston or something like that. We could be in this kind of quiet town that had all of this incredible world-class art and music happening here. It was sort of the best of both worlds for us.
Yeah.
Moving forward, you know, it depends on how it all looks. I don't know. I mean, we're definitely concerned, but it's the same. Everyone's dealing with the same thing. So it's not unique to North Adams.
Right. Well, I think, you know, again, it is a unique place to have the, you know, the sort of cultural institutions and the brain trust in this area is pretty amazing. So it is hard to beat. And, you know, I think this is one of the reasons why we wanted to invite you to come and speak with us, because I think you're a perfect example of artists that are thriving here. If you haven't already seen Galen's work, Galen was one of the artists chosen to participate in our downtown art banner project. And so Galen's work is actually in one of our storefronts, along with 8 other artists. So hopefully, if you haven't had a chance to see that, you should come down and see that. And Galen has been in an exhibition in our gallery, and any other artists like her are amazing here in our community. And so I think that it is a testament to how unique and wonderful our town is.
It is.
You know, I invite all of you to definitely continue to watch and support Galen. And we look forward to talking to Galen again at some point. And as I said, Galen, thank you so much for letting us into your studio.
Thank you so much. It's been really fun.
Absolutely. And before we go, I want to make sure we don't have any more questions for Galen. That's cool. I wanted to thank all of you for joining us and participating in this session. As I said, we will do our Gallery 51 featured artist segment every other Saturday. So after this, we have Gerald Jeffield, who is an artist out of Los Angeles, who will come and join us. And again, we will send out posts and all that good stuff about this. Thank you, Galen. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you, Veronica, for moderating. Yeah, so have a wonderful rest of the day. The sun is out, and anyone who missed this, it will be archived on our website, and you can go to the MCLA YouTube channel and see this segment. So tell your friends. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Erica.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Galen.
everybody.